right, thank you, Jessica, and hello, everybody. Thank you all for allowing me to present today. It's been an excellent conference, my first one, and I just want to say that my 10-month-old son is napping in the nursery next door. So if you hear some crying, I'm not ignoring him. My wife said she'll watch him while I do this. So don't want you to think that I'm a bad father or anything. But with that said, I'm presenting on the American Girls Baseball Conference, which was around from 1949 to 1952. And this is a research that I've been doing probably for the past 3 years. And I keep discovering more stuff, more information, which is understandable being that, you're researching an entire conference, but part of me doesn't want it to end because I keep finding out more information and more stuff that I just want to keep knowing about. So let's start with, how did this all begin? How did this league get formed? And I have to go back to Queens, New York in the summer of 1941. Public school 14, public school 19. They had a summer sports program for their students. And during this program, they had everything from, I think, tennis to track to girls softball. And one of the gentlemen who sort of ran this program there was a gentleman by the name of Michael Strauss. And Mr. Strauss was sort of overseeing all of the sports, had his eye on everything. He was a New York Times journalist for, I think close to 30, maybe even 40 years, covering everything from archery to yachting, skiing, and of course, baseball. He would eventually go back and manage his own high school baseball team. He was just a real go-getter, always looking for the next opportunity, the next adventure, if you will. And he was very good at recognizing talent, but more importantly, he recognized opportunity. So during this summer sports program, he sees this group of girls, young girls, playing softball. And he says, how would you girls like to form a team, travel around the country and play other teams? Now, keep in mind, these girls are 13, 14. I think some might have been 15. So they needed permission to do so from their parents. Some go back, they get that permission. And enough of them get the permission where Mr. Strauss can form this team. And he forms a softball team known as the Yankee Girls. So the Yankee Girls, again, a softball team formed in 1941. Mr. Strauss acts as their manager and coach, age 14 to 15 years of age, and they played against other local teams. And when I say local, these were Nassau girls, Queens girls. They were playing a lot of Nassau County, Suffolk County, Long Island, New York, but they also ventured out to Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Connecticut. So they were pretty much in that tri-state area. And this went on for a couple of years, these games that they were playing against one another. And then after a few years, one of the team members made a suggestion. And I don't know if it was Mr. Strauss or one of the other teams, but the suggestion was, why don't we start a league? We're already playing each other on a daily basis. We're traveling. And that's exactly what they do. So in 1945, we see the formation of the American Girls Softball League. And here we have a clip from the Nassau Daily Review sort of announcing the formation of this league. It was initially 4 teams. They bumped it up to 6, New York, Connecticut, New Jersey. Johnny Otis, who was very much involved in women's sports in the area in New Jersey, becomes the commissioner of the league. The league had no male umpires, but they did have plenty of male managers and coaches. Now, as for the Yankee Girls, they jump right into the league, but before they can even play a game, they're rebranded as the Long Island Colonials because they're representing Long Island. I think within the first season of this league, they're rebranded as the Long Island Jewels because they take on their first sponsor, the Greenwald Jewelers. And then, of course, halfway through the following season, the Long Island Jewels become the Arthur Murray girls baseball team, taking on the sponsorship of the Arthur Murray Dance Studio. The team played in Cedarhurst Municipal Stadium, which is in Nassau County, Long Island. And of course, they would become the inaugural champions and the face of that franchise. Now, the Murrays would be the face of the franchise and the league and the subsequent baseball league. And I'll get into that in just a moment. Now, with this softball league, you can imagine they didn't have the resources to find as many players as you would in a professional league with a minor league system or drafting out of college. So they had to find a lot of clever ways to get talent into the league. And Mr. Strauss, who worked for the New York Times, would often put ads in the paper like this one. Mike Strauss of Jamaica, manager of the Greenwald Jewels, is looking for a third baseman. And I like at the very bottom, it writes, you can reach him by writing to the New York Times Sports Department in New York City. So if anybody was interested and thought they had the talent, simply send Mr. Strauss the letter, and they will have these open tryouts. And of course, if you see in the little picture, a gentleman just walks up to a lady in the street saying, ma'am, madam, can you play third base? And she's kind of thrown back. So they had a little humor with that. But the league is a hit. Strauss, the commissioner, and the other owners do very well to get the public aware and involved with this. We see the teams playing one another in front of good crowds, not great crowds, but a good amount. But they start to have celebrity softball games, which draws funds for the league and also bigger crowds. Here we have, in this newspaper clip, an upcoming celebrity game against sportscasters from all three of the tri-state areas. They would have celebrity games against other athletes. Sometimes they would be from other sports, being track and field. Sometimes we would play against basketball players. And sometimes it was just celebrities that weren't athletes. Anything to really draw in the crowd and try to bring up revenue for this league. They did have the first televised broadcast of a girls' softball game on July 10th, 1948. So this really surprised me. I thought there might have been something sooner, but this was the first one. And if we see here in the paper, the game is between the Arthur Murray girls and the Tacoma Decorators of Washington, D.C. You're going to hear the name Arthur Murray girls baseball a lot through this presentation, because like I said, they really became the face of this conference. But with all of this success going on, there was a big change ahead. And the change had a lot to do with something that was happening in the Midwest. There was a league that was playing baseball. I'm sure you've probably all heard of it, the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. It became an inspiration for this softball league to sort of switch gears. And that's exactly what happens in 1949, excuse me. And here we have a newspaper article announcing it in Long Island Newsday. And it says they're going to try something new in girls' sports circles this year. The Hostess girls of Freeport and the Murray girls of Cedarhurst, both switching from softball to a modified form of baseball. The Old American Girls Softball League has renamed itself the American Girls Baseball Conference, but will field the same group of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut teams. And then it goes on to talk about the success of the All-Americans and how this really inspired this change. So with this new baseball league now, these are the teams that were in it. The very top, the Arthur Murray girls, who played in Cedarhurst and Floral Park. They kind of switched stadiums back and forth. The Hostess girls of Freeport, New York, the Forest Jewels of New York as well, the Manorettes of Huntington, New York, Idlewild Flyers of Queens, New York, and the Colleens of Queens, New York as well, and the Alpines of Bronx, New York. So it's very much heavy New York teams. I'd say about 75% of them. But then we do have the Flashettes of Garfield, New Jersey, and the Nutmegs of Stamford, Connecticut. Now, there were two teams in the softball league that didn't transition over. They were the Tacoma Decorators, which were that team that had the first televised game, and the Cardinalettes of Perth Amboy, New Jersey, also sort of stayed with the softball and didn't really, for political bureaucracy reasons, might not have joined the league. So moving forward now, the game is baseball, but there's also a new focus. And this new focus, from what I find from researching this, is that they weren't so much interested in the scores and the victories and the losers and the championships. The focus is on the females, the girls who are now playing baseball. It was very much a novelty to a lot of the viewers. So the papers start to do pieces on the players and the women themselves. If you look to the far left where it says perfect form, that's Audrey Erickson. She became the star of the league. A great player, but I think a lot of it had to do with she had that All-American look. So they would often comment on how beautiful she was and how she was the All-American girl. So they made her sort of the poster child. Moving to the right with that male player, that's Preacher Rowe of the Dodgers. So now we start to see these female players alongside their male counterparts, sort of to bring that into focus for a lot of people in the audience. Keep moving to the right, Yolanda Klaskin. She sort of takes on the mantle of women's sports during a time when it was just really starting to come into that Northeast territory. So they would do a lot of pieces on her and her fight. And then if we look to the far right, we'll get into her a little more. Gloria Del Percio, the dancer darling. It wasn't too uncommon to see the press give these players nicknames. And if I'm just going to go back one quick second, if you notice all of this, they're all wearing Arthur Murray on their shirts. These are all Arthur Murray players. So even though the press was focusing a lot on the players, a lot of times they were focusing on the players from the Arthur Murray girls baseball team, because they were indeed the stars of this league, the Yankees or the Dodgers, if you will. And if you look up top in the back row, sort of looking over in the distance, that's Arthur Murray himself. He funded this team out of his own pocket. So it wasn't the company that was funding it. It was his own personal funds, which is why I couldn't find any record from the league, or from the studio rather, until I spoke to someone who had been there for many, many years. And then we get to the point of the league where I call it the rise of the Murrays, where the Arthur Murrays sort of supersede the league itself. Everything is about the Arthur Murray girls. Who are they playing? Who are they winning? Who's their star player that week? All of these celebrity games now involve the Arthur Murrays. They were taking on the brunt of the celebrity games that were raising funds for this league and for the teams. So much so that they were involved in just about every event the league sponsored, including playing male counterparts. This was Suffolk County, June 23rd, 1949. And the Murrays came there to play, at the time, the top male club, semi-professional club in the county, the Patchogue Athletics. Now, the game drew a huge crowd, and even though the Murrays came out on the losing end, they got the respect of the crowd from the adulation they received afterwards. But also, every male player on that team made sure that they shook every female player's hand and told them what great of a job or how powerful that game was to them. And in 1952, it would be the Murrays that signed a TV deal. So they're going to play the Murrays games Saturday nights on ABC. Now, this is towards the tail end of this conference. And keep in mind that they're not playing games from the conference. They're only playing games that the Arthur Murrays played in. So it was really much the Murrays' contract to have their games televised in this conference. So we do see a lot of success and a lot of buildup in this new baseball league. Obviously, some things remain the same. We start to see a lot of press in favor of the league, but we do see a lot of the sexist mentality that was around during that time. Here, when they're talking about the league, they put up a little cartoon picture where female player is swinging and the other player says, "Nice form, kiddo, but can you hit?" So that was still very common during that time. Now, there is initial success with the baseball league, just like there was initial success with that softball league. The Murrays are raising a lot of money for the league. We have that TV deal. To the far right, Audrey Erickson, that face of the league and the team. She's also a reporter, so she had a column every week where she talks about the new happenings. And from what I can tell, everything kept going up, 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 up. A lot of promise. In fact, in this one piece, she writes that we're already looking ahead to the following season. Little did she know that would be their final season in 1952. We start to see a steady decline in attendance and interest and just about everything involved with the league. And a big part of that is because some of the teams broke off to form the Eastern Girls Baseball League. There were some disagreements amongst the owners, the managers, and we have the Huntington Manorettes, who were at the very start of this break off and sort of joined this other league and took a couple of those other teams with them. So it really sort of split a small fan base in two. Plus, we have televisions are becoming more ubiquitous during this time. Jackie Robinson breaks the color barrier, so now there's more interest in baseball than ever before. So the viewership in that TV deal just wasn't drawing the type of audiences that they would have expected. But ultimately, it would be poor promotion, poor management, poor resources. The combination of the three would eventually be the decline and the end of that conference, that league. And I put up the picture of the Yankees because they sort of were doing everything right at that time in terms of promotion, management, and resources. But the league just couldn't really mimic that type of success. So the league does say goodbye in 1952. Wasn't around for many years, but it did leave a very strong, powerful history, and one that I'm glad I'm still able to present to viewers like you and around the world. And I was able to really talk to a lot of individuals involved with this league. I presented about a year ago in Pennsylvania. And at the end of the presentation, I got an email from someone by the name of Diane Wilson asking if we could speak on the phone. And I give her a call, and she's so ecstatic on the phone. She She said, "That's my mother. That's my mother." And I said, "Well, slow down. I'm sorry. I'm not following." She said, "Dolores Dubkowski's my mother." She goes, "I knew she played sports when she was younger, but I had no idea that she was in a professional women's baseball league." And she was just so happy. Now her and her daughter have been doing genealogy and researching and finding so much about this amazing woman and everything she did outside of baseball. Audrey Erickson, which I mentioned before, is the face of the league and the franchise. She was in Look magazine in 1949, which of course was a very popular publication during that time. And they talk about everything that she does with baseball and all of her other activities. And I just don't know how she found time to sleep. Everything from track to dancing to I think she was a French pastry chef, just all sorts of activities. And she still found time to be a tremendous baseball player in this league. Mary and Nellie Anzalato of the Huntington Manorets. I think they were 4'8". They were known as the spark plugs of this team. You see there and her size in comparison to the umpire or the catcher rather, and just a great pairing of sisters at a time when family baseball was really brothers. But here we have these two sisters that are there playing these games, and their family would be there in the crowd rooting louder than anybody. Sue Mi Lei of the Huntington Manorets, the only Chinese American baseball player in that league, a daughter of Chinese immigrants. I've been still researching more about her to find out more about her story. I do know that she was one of the star players for the Huntington Manorets, and I think at one time she might have been the home run leader for that league. And then, of course, there's Gloria Del Percio, the last remaining member who's still with us from the Arthur Murrays, and I think might be the last remaining member of the New York teams. I still haven't dug too deep into New Jersey and Connecticut. She's 97 years young in Florida. We still communicate quite often. The dancer darling, and I just want to share one of our last interactions. She sends me this note. "Fabio, loved your presentation, brought back such wonderful memories. The history of baseball will go on until eternity. Women athletes have now gone beyond my days. Thank you for choosing my past athletic life. You are loved, Gloria." And I just love this one part here from her card. "It may have been something simple to you, but it meant everything to me." And to me, that just emphasizes what this league was to these women. It was everything. It was just the opportunity to play baseball and do something that they love. All right, thank you all so much. I know I was a little fast with that, but I wanted to leave time for a Q&A. So I'm just gonna stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you so much. We do have a couple questions in the chat already. Do you know if there is any surviving footage of the televised games?
Yes, that's a great question. And I called WPIX to put that footage in my presentation, and they wanted $157 per second. So I couldn't afford that.
Oh my gosh. Okay. How much were the players paid? Did any of the league's players go on to play in the AAGPBL?
Another great question. There was some payment, but when I spoke to Gloria, she said the Murrays weren't being paid. And I said, "So you were professional players, but they weren't paying you?" And she said, "Well, they paid for our travel, they paid for our uniforms, they paid for our equipment, which we could use whenever we want." But it seemed a little odd to me that they weren't paying them, especially with that sponsorship from the Arthur Murray Dance Studio. But again, poor management. There was a lot going on behind the scenes that ultimately led to this downfall. But I think the other teams did receive some paychecks.
When they switched to baseball, was there any pushback from the softball community?
Not that I can tell. The only pushback I saw was from the Tacoma Decorators and the Cardinalettes, who didn't want to switch to baseball, so they didn't end up joining the league. But I think the community, for the most part, the strong following and followed them into that other league.
Do you know anything about the umpires of the games?
No, I haven't gotten into any of the research with the umpires. But that's definitely on my to-do list.
But you said they weren't men, so they were all women umpires, right?
Yes, they were all women umpires. I got that from Gloria, and then also when I read further into the league, they wanted the female umpires to be on there to give it more of a feel of this is women's baseball. But behind the scenes with the managers and the coaches, they didn't really push for too many women to be in those positions.
Thank you. Good presentation.
Thank you.
How did you get started on this research?
Believe it or not, I went to the Nine conference, and there was some research on women's baseball, and I'm very much into community baseball on Long Island, where I'm from. And I said, I wonder if there was ever any type of female players or leagues here. I would thought maybe some of the All-Americans might have came here just to visit or whatnot. And then all of a sudden I see this game between the Murrays and the Patchogue Athletics, and I dug deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's when I found out. And someone did ask if anybody played for the All-Americans. Muriel Bevis, I believe, ended up going to the All-Americans, but she played for the Murrays or vice versa. But Gloria did get an invite to try out for the All-Americans. And her father, who was somewhat okay with her playing in the tri-state area, said, I'm not letting you go out to the Midwest. So he kind of put the brakes on that.
Any other questions? You can put them in the chat or raise your hand. You mentioned the Yankees and the Dodgers. Did you see anything about them talking about the league? Did they have any feedback about these women that were also getting press and publicity?
The only thing I came across was the meeting with Preacher Rowe, who had great things to say about them, and I think he might have even made a joke about them. And maybe we could use them on our team at the time, because I think the Dodgers might have been on a losing streak or whatnot, but that was about the extent of it. Nothing from the Yankees, unfortunately.
Good feedback in the chat. Anything else? This was really great. I think we're all learning more about some other leagues other than the All-American Girls League today. So that's been really great. If nobody has anything else, we can move on to our next presentation. Thank you so much, Fabio.